I do get the impression that because the sea is just this kind of blue uniform thing, it's much harder for people to kind of grasp what goes on under the sea because you can't see it. Whereas on land, it's easy to make that association with trees and birds, and the same sort of things are happening under the water. It's just that people can't see them, so it's harder for them to understand why we need to protect these areas as much as the ones above ground. So an example I try and use is if you're travelling by car from say Mount Gambier, and you're driving up through the Coorong and then up into the Adelaide Hills, out into the Murray Mallee, and then up to the Flinders Ranges and out into the desert. If you looked out your car window as you made that journey, you'd see a huge difference. The soil would be changing, the plants would be changing, and all the animals would be changing. And if you kind of imagine doing the same journey underwater, you'd really find the same sort of differences going on. It's really an amazing place underwater. It's just that because people can't see it, I think it's hard for people to appreciate that sometimes. My name's Danny Mayle. I work for Natural Resources Kangaroo Island, and I work as the project officer coasts. So one of my main responsibilities is the administration of the 4 marine parks around Kangaroo Island. 2/3 of the coastline around Kangaroo Island is now protected by marine parks, which is a really high percentage, and 11% of the coast is now within the sanctuary zone. It's a pretty amazing place. For anyone who's ever spent a lot of time here, the natural beauty of the place is just awesome. There's not many places where you can go where you have such isolation, I guess. So many beautiful beaches that you can go to with there's just no one else there. It's a pretty amazing place to be, especially with the fact that nearly half the island is still intact bush, and a lot of that is protected, and so there's a huge array of different types of wildlife here. Oh, hang on, just about to hit an echidna. You always have to keep an eye out for wildlife.
My name is Tony Bartram, and I am the coordinator of the Kangaroo Island Victor Harbour Dolphin Watch program here on Kangaroo Island, and obviously in Victor Harbour as well. And effectively what we do is monitor the local dolphin populations, and those local dolphin populations are significant. And so the idea is to actually monitor them, and our greatest desire is to actually protect and conserve. And to be able to protect and conserve, the singularly most important factor is to find out where they go when. And so we go out, photograph the dorsal fins of the dolphins, which are relatively easy to actually identify animals from because of the significant damage that's done to them on occasions. And those particular dorsal fins are an identifier just like our thumbprint.
You can see damage here, which linked to this. This means that this animal most likely has been entangled at some stage when you get that sort of effect across. Another distinctive one, and that's how we identify them, and we try and work out who's where when. And as you can see with that one, they can be a real mess.
We have some very, very interesting dolphins in amongst the group here. Just some of the characters, for example, would be Alyssa. Alyssa is an animal we've known for a period of time with just a little notch out of the back of her fin, but very distinctive. And Alyssa has had 2 calves in the time we've actually been studying the dolphins here, which is around about 10 years. And we had a very, very good experience just recently where Alyssa was acting in a very, very strange way. And we found Alyssa was actually killing and eating a stingray, and at the same time teaching her 2 calves, Juliet and Alice, how to do it without getting stung. And the interface between dolphins and stingrays is often very, very nasty, and it ends up with the dolphin dying. It's the first time, to our knowledge, that it's actually been recorded anywhere in the world. And funnily enough, about 2 weeks before that, there was a program on TV, and Ingrid Visser, one of the world's leading experts on orcas in New Zealand, was actually stating that orcas, which are actually the largest of the dolphin family, were the only dolphins known to actually eat stingrays. And there we are 2 weeks later, and we're actually seeing it happen. We also have some very, very interesting ways of telling dolphins on the water. Some are very distinctive and you can see them straight away just by their shape. Dolphins like Garth, for example, and Garth's a traveller. We see Garth, then we don't see Garth, and then we see Garth again 4 years later, and then you don't see Garth, and then 4 years later, there he is again. But there's also sad sides as well. I mean, we've had to go to strandings and actually that had some very, very sad times with animals that have died, etc. We've lost a couple of calves. But probably the saddest experience we've had was a day out off Dashwood Bay when the dolphins were acting very strangely. They were very purposeful and moving in a particular group, zigzagging, gently, going out to sea. And then we noticed that Tiki, one of our better known females, was actually carrying something, and it turned out that it was actually a small dead calf. And so obviously she was grieving very much for her calf and being supported by the rest of the pod in this funeral cortege, just heading out to sea. And that was a very, very moving experience.
Oh,
Yeah.
So the position is 35 degrees, 4365 south. Latitude is 138, 00408 east.
There is new information being developed all the time from the work that we're doing. And one of the most important things in terms of protection and conservation is that we see mating, and there's a 12-month gestational period. So we see 12 months later calves, and this happens across the whole of the year. And this is very, very important because if there are calves in the water, of course, they don't have any protective instincts or anything like that. Everything is learned. They're mammalian like we are, and so that means that they learn everything from their mum, and therefore they're very, very much at risk unless there's proper protections in place.
It's important for people to know that there is a whole lot of science behind marine parks. We need ongoing science in order to be able to show that the marine parks are protecting the habitats and the animals that they are supposed to be protecting. And groups like Dolphin Watch can play an important part in that. And there's some amazing stuff out there, and if we can build on the amount of knowledge that people have of the marine environment, then people hopefully will appreciate more and more why we have these parks and why it's important to protect some of these areas.
The marine parks themselves give a focus to the marine environment, and one of the biggest problems that we have is the marine environment is underrepresented in every way. And so what we have is a situation where most people are either frightened of the sea, or they just see it as a dumping ground, or they want to use its resources through extractive industries and the like. And so there needs to be a shift in the way people think about the marine environment, because you can't ask people to care for something if they haven't experienced it. And the marine parks offer a brilliant opportunity for people to go out and have really good experiences and learn a great deal, and therefore come up with that caring and custodianship of the marine environment that's really necessary.